Number 1. I live in New York City, Uptown Manhattan, and my neighborhood is decent, and nothing too bad happens around here. So as a 5-foot 3-inch tall female, I feel comfortable walking around at any time at night. Okay, so during the summer, I went out with friends, we watched a few movies, and then late in the afternoon, I decided I was done for the day. There's so many movies a person can see. I was walking home when this short man, shorter than me, with blonde hair and green eyes, says hello and waves with a friendly smile. Confused, I ignore him and go on my way. The next day, I am at the park with my best friend. Again, the same short man from the day before walks past us and he waves and smiles at me. At this point, I start to think he knows my dad. Everyone knows my dad around these parts, so I wave back, trying not to seem rude, but still confused as to who this man is, and I am trying to place him, but can't. A week later, I am buying groceries for a trip to the beach with some family and friends, and this time, the short man appears next to me and says hello. I greet him politely because if he does know my dad, he's probably the type to complain about rude teens every time he meets with me, and I'm not up for lectures. So I pay for my stuff. He goes on and on about how big I have gotten and how proud he is. Confused, I ask him his name. He smiles, and instead of answering, he says,
"You're so beautiful."
I panic. He notices and makes a move to grab me. I was faster and managed to move far from him, and I ran straight home. 2 days after that meeting, I am walking with my 16-year-old younger brother, who is 6 feet tall and weighs 240 pounds, and the short man again sees me and waves, but doesn't come near me. My younger brother asks me who that guy is. I tell him what's been happening. He looks at me weird when I tell him I think the guy is a friend of our dad, and then he says that no, he isn't. I freak a little bit more because this guy acts like he knows me. I confess this to my brother, who says he's going to walk with me for a few days to see if the guy approaches me when he's with me. For 2 weeks, the short man does not approach me whenever I am with my brother. But one Saturday late afternoon, I am sitting alone on the steps of my building, waiting for my brother and his friends to show up with food and refreshments. The short man walks right by, and I thought he hadn't seen me, but he had. He starts with his usual smile and greeting, but this time he starts to lean down like he's going to kiss me. I jump up from my position and look from left to right. No one is nearby, and I feel panicky. He tries to take my hand. I pull them both away and continues to talk about my looks and how he says I have grown up nicely while looking at my body. At that moment, I see my brother running. He's on the short man in a second, and he says to the short man in his calm voice,
"Move away from her."
The short guy looks panicked, and he's looking up at my brother, and he's trying to find a way to escape, but my brother's friends are now surrounding him. Even with bags of food, they look menacing. My brother grabs the short man, and the next words still freak me out.
"This is your first and final warning. The next time I see you, I'll kill you."
Then he shoved the guy, who was now red in the face and looked near tears. The short guy started running. It was then my brother turned to me and he pointed to my cell phone, asking me why I hadn't called them or at least the cops. I felt stupid, but the honest truth was I panicked and forgot everything other than that panic. Number 2. So a little background story. I'm an athletic 19-year-old female. I was 18 when this happened. I live in a really small town with around 10,000 residents, and there are no streetlights where I live. Basically, everyone has an outside light on their front yards, and at nighttime they have to turn them on to provide lights for the street. And believe me, it doesn't light up that much. Anyways, it was around May of last year when this happened. Since I have a very hard time falling asleep, I used to go on nighttime joggings all the time between 1 and 3 a.m. It helped me fall asleep. My boyfriend and dad were always really concerned about that because it didn't seem safe for me to be jogging around the neighborhood super late at night. But like I said, I live in a really small town, and I always thought nothing bad could happen to me until that night. So it was a normal night, kind of cold. I remember having my raincoat on. I tied my shoes and went on my almost daily nighttime jogging routine. I'd say probably around 1 or 2 a.m. I ran the same distance and took the same path, but for some reason, I ran faster than usual and had to take a short walking break to catch my breath. I stopped in front of a park a couple streets away from my house and started walking back toward my house. That's when I noticed him. He was standing in the middle of the park with a dog that looked like a husky or something as big as that. Like I said before, there are no street lights and no lights in the park either. Plus, the street I was on only had 2 houses, so they were not providing that much light. I really could not tell if he was looking at me or even facing me at all. Obviously, it kind of shocked me to see someone wandering in a park so late at night, and I was not used to seeing people in the streets during those hours. I shook it off and kept walking to head back home, but after a few steps ahead, I started to feel uneasy and weirded out. I looked over my shoulder and saw him walking behind me, still holding his dog on leash. He was approximately 2 meters behind me. My heartbeat was already pretty high from running, but I felt like it got even higher. I didn't feel safe at all, and even though I tried to keep calm, I just couldn't, so I started running as fast as I could without looking behind me. To my horror, he started running too. I could hear his footsteps behind me. After what felt like ages of sprinting through different streets, I couldn't take it anymore. I was already exhausted from my jogging, so I turned into a driveway after taking a sharp turn into another street and hid, crouching behind bushes in the front yard. Not even 5 seconds later, I heard him take the turn and run past where I was hiding, thank God. He then stopped running a few meters in front of where I was and started looking everywhere. I irrationally thought he knew where I was because my heart was beating so hard I thought he could hear it. He was looking to the left, and right again. Then he finally turned around, and I got to see him a little bit better. I definitely couldn't tell how old he was, but considering that he kept up with my running, he was probably less than 40 or just in really good shape. He was wearing all black, hoodie, pants, and a cap. His dog looked like a husky breed mixed with something else. He then turned back and started running again. I stayed behind the bush until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. God, I even stayed a good 10 minutes more after that. I was so afraid. I didn't want to come out because I was still very vulnerable in the streets, and he could have come back at any time. I then took all the courage and energy I had left. I came out of where I was hiding and started sprinting back in the opposite direction where he had gone in order for me to head back home. I made it safely and promised myself to never run late at night. Never again. Number 3. So I'm a runner and I live in a very safe neighborhood. I run about 5 times a week and go through my usual routine of walking down my street, taking a right, walking about 1,000 feet more, then taking a left, and starting to run on a stretch of wide main road. On one of these days, as I was following my usual routine, I was running on the stretch of the main road when I saw a gray van approach me as it slowed down considerably. To give a little more background information, I'm a teen and about 5'3¼ and petite. I listen to a lot of scary stories on YouTube and have known to be more aware. He started slowing down and I stopped and turned to face him. He was wearing shades, a very dark green jacket, and his hair was a mess. He looked unkempt and didn't seem like a fit fellow. I started getting nervous as he rolled down his window, and in my nervous state, looked around only to find we were alone. There was no one else driving, walking, running, or doing anything similar. I was alone on this long stretch of a road with absolutely no one on either side. He didn't speak, and he suddenly sped off. I felt relief wash over me and started running again. About 30 seconds into it, I noticed the same gray van returning, and panic came back once again. The guy had taken a U-turn and was coming back towards me. Same shades, same dark green jacket, same messy hair, and unkempt looked, but this time he was much, much closer to me as his side was facing me. He slowed down once again, but this time I picked up my pace and continued to run fast. It was obviously easy enough for him to keep up with me, and I eventually got tired and had to walk. At this point, I was scared because there was still no sign of another soul, and when I turned to him, he was nodding his head and grinning this creepy grin. His teeth were surprisingly clean compared to the rest of this man's appearance. I felt a huge rush of panic and anxiety rush over me when I heard a low, deep, dark voice say,
"Hey, baby, what are you up to?"
Trying not to let him know I was scared, I simply said, "Please leave me alone," and began running again. He floored the pedal and caught up with me. My shoelace untied, and I had to unfortunately sit down and tie it when he stopped and said,
"You're really pretty. Get in the van and I'll show you something."
I was horrified and just said, "No, thank you. Please leave me alone. My answer is no." He was not happy to hear that. I saw his face turn red and his expression turn to anger.
"Get in the van, you bitch!"
I stopped, turned around, and ran my ass out the other direction with tears flooding my eyes. Just when I thought I had lost him, I heard him shout,
"You bitch! Get into my van!"
I was so afraid he had a gun that I turned and said, "I'm fine the way I am. Please leave me alone." I was trying my hardest to not let my fear be heard in my quivery voice. I felt intense panic when I heard him say,
"Yeah, you're gonna be fine soon."
Adrenaline levels shot up and my fight or flight response kicked into full gear. I ran faster than I thought I could have and it turned abruptly. He somehow turned as well, and I thought I was going to die when he shouted,
"Get in the van now, you bitch, or I'll do something I regret."
I decided to ignore him, but my heart was already up in my throat from fear and continued running faster than I imagined. When he came back, he shouted,
"You're a bitch. I'll find someone else."
Relieved he went away, I ran back home in tears. I just hope he hasn't done anything to anyone else. I was too scared to report it to the police, and I regret that now. Creepy Mina here of the Worst Nightmare channel. I hope you enjoyed those 3 stories of women experiencing creepy encounters while walking or jogging. Now, what did we learn from those 3 stories? Don't jog late at night. If a van approaches you, jog in the opposite direction. Never be afraid to call the police. And it doesn't hurt to walk with your 6-foot-tall, 240-pound brother. Now, please comment below, have you ever had a similar experience? Give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video on your favorite social networking platform, follow me on Twitter as worstnightmare6 for advance notice of all uploaded videos as well as notice of any schedule changes, and always remember to stay safe.